right, welcome into Calling the Shots, brought to you by Blue Shark Vodka, the smoothest vodka in the world. We're in person here. I'm your host, Ross Martin, joined as always by Jeff Schoettmer in Chapel Hill in our Inside Carolina offices here. We want to thank Blue Shark Vodka for the sponsorship of this show. We're coming to you after UNC's 42-24 win over Pitt. UNC's now 7-1. 4-0 in the ACC, 4-0 in the Coastal, a stranglehold now on the Coastal Division. Jeff, you were at the game. You were the hype man before the game. We're heard live, so a little bit of a special show. Your initial thoughts of UNC's game overall before we get into a couple topics.
And we start every week with this, all we're trying to do is just win. 7-1, 4-0 in the ACC, another home victory. But it's the same storyline every week. It's Drake May, who is the best quarterback in the ACC and a potential Heisman candidate. It's Josh Downs. It's our skill position. And then it's our defense. They're making stops when they need to at times. And over the last 4 or 5 games, we've looked, like a competent defense. So
yeah, it's like opportunistic defense as well. I mean, the turnovers against Duke were huge. And then the forced fumble against Pitt in the second half was big to kind of give UNC a bigger lead. Drake May was fantastic. 34 for 44, 388 yards, 5 touchdowns. I mean, I saw him on Twitter last night getting mentioned for the Heisman by some national reporters. The momentum's getting there. His stats are as good as anybody in the nation. Josh Downs and Antoine Green had 2 of their best games of the season. Downs, 11 catches, 102 yards, 2 touchdowns. Green, 10 catches, 180 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And really, UNC kind of abandoned the run game. I know we're going to talk about that more, but they only got, 86 yards on the ground, and 61 of those were by Drake. So nothing really cooking in the run game. Let's get into our topics. Drake May off the top, and the wide receiver duo for UNC. Your initial thoughts on those 3 guys?
Drake what he did in this game is what he's done the whole year. He's so mobile in the pocket. He navigates the pocket so well. I think what we saw in this game more so than we've seen in games past was his arm strength.
Yeah.
You mentioned it earlier. His ability to throw from one hash of the field to the far sideline on a deep comeback or a deep out route, and not a lot of quarterbacks in college have that ability. And Drake just makes it look so easy.
When you saw him, because you were on the staff last year, when you saw him as a true freshman, did you see that talent in practice?
And I'll be completely honest, he had a lot of raw ability, but he wasn't as polished as he is now.
Yeah.
So, when I left, after the 2021 season, obviously he had, was Sam's backup that whole year, and he got to learn under Sam. But, he would get a bunch of practice reps versus our 2s and 3s, and you would see flashes of his ability to make big-time throws, but he was a true freshman. Mm-hmm. So he did make some mistakes, but, that's what you do in practice. But the development he had from, January right after the South Carolina Bowl game up until this season, all the coaches that I've talked to just raved about, the hard work he put in. The talent was obviously always there, but just the consistency level now is at a point where, he's solidified himself as the top quarterback in the ACC and, top 3 or 4 in the country.
Yeah, and all these shows, there's only so much you can say about the guy, but just every game he shows up. He hasn't really had a poor performance. He's had one, maybe not as good, but this game, completed 77% of his passes. He's averaging, I think, 69% on the season. This is his 5th straight game of 300-plus yards. One of the best quarterbacks in the country. I mean, I think it's going to be hard if he's not going to be a top number 1 pick or at least top 5 pick in NFL draft next season. Remember, he's a redshirt freshman, so only has to play 2 years in college as an actual player, 3 years in college before leaving for the NFL. Okay, Josh Downs and Antoine Green. I thought this was Antoine Green's best game as a Tar Heel.
Yeah.
10 catches, 180 yards, 2 touchdowns, was getting open. Let's talk about Green first and then Downs and kind of get into how those 2 guys make it so difficult for a defense.
So Antoine Green has a crazy story, right? It was a very highly rated recruit, and he comes in and gets hurt his freshman year. He kind of battles some injuries, and I think Tar Heel fans were like, when is this kid going to step up?
Yeah.
And Antoine Green has arrived, and I want to give him a bunch of credit. Lonnie Galloway has done a great job developing him over these last couple of years, but AG kind of blocked out all the noise that he wasn't producing, and now this is the fully healthy Antoine Green that looks like an NFL draft pick.
Yeah, he struggled with injuries, like you mentioned. Like it was a collarbone or some injury against Syracuse or some injury like that, and then
he broke his foot or his leg versus Syracuse.
Was that
in
Syracuse?
2018.
Okay, yeah, as a freshman, and like he was a highly rated recruit, and sometimes it takes time. It doesn't all happen as a freshman, sophomore, junior. Sometimes it takes 3-4 years in a strength and conditioning program to get to where you need to do. He is performing. He has that speed. His crisp routes. He's getting open, and of course, we have a great quarterback like Drake. It makes things easier. Josh Downs, 11 catches, 102 yards, 2 touchdowns. He only had 3 catches for 8 yards in the first half.
Yep.
And then Mac Brown said in the post-game press conference, we had to give him the ball more. We had to target him more. He finished with 17 targets.
Wow.
So Josh Downs, more of the same, but just so quick, so precise. Just gets past the cornerback, creates separation, creates a window for Drake May.
Yeah, so here's what Pitt does on defense, right? They're not going to change as long as Pat Narduzzi's there. They have an attacking style quarters coverage defense where essentially they're on an island. The safeties have the slot receivers man-to-man on vertical routes, and the cornerbacks have the outside receivers on vertical routes. So, if our offense aligns in a 2x2 set with Josh Downs in the slot, we know that safety from 10 yards of depth has Josh Downs man-to-man, essentially, if he runs a vertical route. Mm-hmm. So it's so hard for a safety who is traditionally known as more of a run defender to flat-foot cover Josh Downs with 10 yards of cushion. Yeah. So Josh Downs is so good at his body control, his crisp routes, his movement ability is so much better than these safeties. It's such a mismatch.
And stay tuned. After this segment, this portion of the show, we're going to bring out this whiteboard. I know a lot of people on the message boards have been asking for Jeff to do a little X and O's breakdown. We're going to swing the whiteboard over here, and we're going to have a good 10 to 15-minute session of breaking down quarters coverage, breaking down what UNC does on defense, UNC's run game blocking scheme, so stay tuned for that. Obviously, when you have 2 really good wide receivers, it makes a challenge for a defense. What kind of stuff does Josh Downs, Antoine Green do to a defense? How does it stress them? What does a defense coordinator have to do when he sees those talented receivers with that talented of a quarterback?
So what we saw yesterday is Pitt, they had to play Antoine Green one-on-one. They couldn't double him because they're playing their true quarters defense where when we put Antoine Green outside, we know he's one-on-one with that cornerback, and he's got no help because the safety's covering Josh Downs in the slot. So we know that, and Antoine Green knew this going into the game, that all he's got to do is win his one-on-one outside, and that's why we threw him a bunch of vertical routes, vertical knockdowns where he sells like he's running vertical and then settles down because the corner, he's breaking his cushion. But we knew going into the game that, this is their defense. They played this way, the last 4 or 5 years we played them, and they're going to give us some issues in the run game, and they did, and that's kind of why we abandoned that run game and just went to the throw game. I think we threw the ball. We dropped back 50-something times. I mean, Drake obviously had some scramble attempts.
And some sacks, yeah.
Some sacks, but
44 times. Threw the ball 44 times.
Threw the ball 44 times, yeah. So
it's a little high for Drake. Yeah, this was kind of the theme in Mac Brown's press conference, and I wrote about it after the game on InsideCarolina.com. Mac was like, look, we weren't running the ball very well. We abandoned the run game and said, let's just throw it. We have a great quarterback. He's very accurate. We have 2 great wide receivers. Let's just have an extension of the run game through passing. Let's look downfield to our stud wide receivers. And that's what they did, and it worked. It's kind of the philosophy of Phil Longo of taking what the defense gives you. Your thoughts on that kind of philosophy? Does that work? Is that the right play when your run game's not successful?
Yeah, I mean,
obviously it worked.
Yeah, 42 points, and Drake obviously throws for over 350. I think what was it, 388? Mm-hmm. Yeah, and give Longo so much credit because he's adapted with this strength of our skill players now. He's not trying to force the run game all the time, especially when we have some running backs that are banged up. Mm-hmm. You see earlier in the season he's using our tight ends a bunch that he hasn't done in the past. But this game, he knew that our 2 best skill players that were healthy were Josh and Antoine, and Drake obviously getting them the ball. So he, took what Pitt gave us in that quarters coverage where we knew that we were going to have one-on-ones all day with Josh and Antoine. And when we exposed them in that.
Antoine said after the game, he was like, we knew the coverages they were giving us, and we executed. All right, and a couple notes here. Injuries. We're recording on Sunday morning. So the injuries we know of right now that kind of left the game on Saturday night. Noah Taylor with a non-contact knee. he's starting Jack for UNC. Des Evans left the game. Not sure his status. Nesbitt only played 5 snaps. He was not a factor in offense. Didn't play many offensive snaps. And Caleb Hood left the game as well. That's why Elijah Green ended up getting the majority of carries for UNC. So, that's 4 starters, 3.5 starters for UNC, potentially out. I know Rucker was also banged up, but I think he did finish the game. So that's offense. Let's move to defense. I think the key here is the second half. UNC's playing great. There's some tweet out there, and I can easily find it here. Pull up the old Twitter machine. Last 4 games. So that's Pitt, Duke, Miami, Virginia Tech.
Yep.
Yeah. UNC's defense has given up a total of 28 points in the second half. So 28 points in 4 games in the 4 second halves. That's a product of players adjusting, and making opportune stops. The key here was that fumble and fumble recovery forced by Kamen Rucker and Cedric Gray, and then getting off the field in the second half and then allowing the offense to go score. That's what they did. Your thoughts in general on the defense, and we'll get into some particulars.
Yeah, if you look at the last 4 games and our 4 ACC games, our defense is allowing under 25 points a game. And if you pair that with our offense, which is a top 10 in the country, number 1 in the ACC, that scores 40 plus a game, that is a recipe for success.
Yeah.
We're not killing ourselves. We're not shooting ourselves in the foot anymore as we were earlier in the season. We're playing competent defense. We're essentially playing the bend don't break that everyone was kind of talking about going into the season. We're allowing teams to put up some yards, but at the end of the day, the number 1 statistic in defensive football is the score and how many points you allow. I
thought holding them to the field goal at the end of the game, at the end of the first half,
yeah,
and then UNC went down and scored a touchdown to make it 14-17 was huge. And then you look here in the second half, Pitt scored a touchdown,
yep,
and then from there on, it was punt, fumble, punt, turnover, and downs, and that was the ball game. Some stats here for Pitt. 131 yards of rushing. That's not awful. Israel Abankande had 127. He got what he expected, 3 touchdowns, but not much else. In the passing game, Keaton Sosa was okay, 14 for 31. He was better than the first half, right, 236 yards, nothing special. So the defense, was okay in the first half, but I thought really good in the second half. And that fumble was huge, changed momentum, and allowed UNC to step up. Any players kind of show up for you? I'll say Legend Cavazos made some plays. We haven't seen him. Don Chapman played more for Gio Biggers a little bit. And Storm Duck, Duck and Grimes get torched. They get up when a cornerback gets torched, they get a lot of fan anger. But Duck made some big plays in the second half as well. Any guys stood out to you?
Yeah, it always starts with Cedric Gray, in my opinion. He's the heart and soul of that defense, and he's the leader of the whole team. You see him rallying the guys, and he's done a great job for us. He commands the whole defense well, just because he's right in the middle. He's the heart of the defense, right? He's got to communicate with the secondary. He's got to communicate with the D-line. He's got to communicate with the other linebackers, Power and Rara, whoever's in the game with him. So, I keep harping on him every week, and he's just continuing to develop, and he looks like a surefire NFL linebacker.
Yeah, I was going to just ask you that. You think Cedric Gray is an NFL guy?
I do. I've talked to him. I talked to a Dallas Cowboys scout that I developed a relationship with over the years, and he said he looks like a mid-round guy if he were to come out this year. So maybe 4, 5, 6 round. If he were to stay next year, they think he can be a top 3 round guy.
Yeah, he has a size, 6'2", 6'3", fast, big. I thought Ritzy looked well. He played a lot. I thought Rucker, with Desmond Evans coming out, Noah Taylor going out, Rucker played a bit more. He had a key sack in the third quarter on 3rd and 9, and then UNC scored on that next possession to push it to 28-24. And after the forced fumble, which Rucker forced on 3rd and 1, early in the fourth, put UNC up 35-24, and from that point, the game kind of got out of control for Pitt. All right, go ahead.
I think the Noah Taylor injury is one to monitor. That's huge for our defense. He's been our most consistent D lineman this whole year, and if he's unable to play the rest of the year, I think that's a big loss for us. You see critical plays throughout the whole year. The App State game, he makes a huge play on the 2-point conversion to win the game. Duke, he played really well. He's just been as solid as we've seen from a defender besides Cedric and Power.
I would say Cedric Gray and Noah Taylor are the two best defenders for UNC. I mean, if he, no news here, if he is out for the season, Virginia's next week. That's where he played for 4 years. Probably a big game for him. And you transfer hoping to boost your NFL stock. So it's tough. And if Desmond Evans, who knows his stats too, but so look for Chris Collins to play more. Chris Collins played a lot against Pitt. Look for Malachi Hamrick to play more, the true freshman, if Noah Taylor isn't set to go. Before we get into some run game stuff briefly, I want to talk about Blue Shark Vodka, smoothest vodka in the world, out of Wrightsville Beach, local, independent. We want to thank them for sponsoring the Calling the Shots show. We got Jeff here in person, Connor Barth, smoothest vodka in the world, Blue Shark Vodka, available in all 100 counties. Had some before the game at tailgate. The Blue Shark Vodka tailgate down in Bowles Lot. Got Kelsey, Caitlin, Dustin, Duke, Coulter. They had all the bottles of Blue Shark Vodka. They had a Blue Shark Vodka cake. They had some fall cocktail. They're big Blue Shark Vodka fans. Very accessible price point, available in all 100 North Carolina counties. Blue Shark Vodka. Support a local, independently owned vodka company, Blue Shark Vodka. Check them out on Instagram and online. The logo here. I want to thank them for their support. Okay, UNC's run game. We talked about it a little bit briefly here. They kind of abandoned the run. We're going to diagram some stuff with UNC, but what do you think just wasn't working? Was it a matter of numbers? Pitt bringing too many people in the box? Was there anything that stuck out to you about UNC's run game?
I think there was two things. I think it was the number of run defenders they had, drawing attention to the game. So it's when they're in quarters coverage, the safeties are in the run game as well. So they would have a receiver vertical, but they're also responsible in the run game too. They have a fit. So and the D line with Pitt has always been really good. They twist a bunch and they penetrate, get movement. So I mean, they're good players. They had, I think one or two guys that were all ACC last year. They always have good linebackers. They pressure their inside backers a bunch, so it makes it hard to block up front. So, look, take what the defense is giving you. If and look, every time we threw the ball, we were having success. So why not keep throwing the ball?
And the extension of the run game, that was big under Larry Fedora as well. Can you talk a little about like that, getting the ball to players in the flat?
Yeah, so just quick passes, that get the balls to our playmaker in space. So Josh Downs is in the backfield. He runs a little swing route. He catches the ball with a defender that's 5 yards away. So he has space to operate and he can make a miss easier. It's quick, easy throws for Drake. Kind of to not let the Pittsburgh D line get rushing and affect Drake and us having to block him more. So Phil Long had a great game.
I was going to say, Longo makes adjustments, he does little wrinkles. I mean, a great called game. I mean, he is emerging as one of the best offensive coordinators in the country, and his name is on there for some group of 5 head coaching jobs as well. Okay, that's kind of the breakdown of the first segment of the show here. A couple other topics we want to talk about. First, let's talk about Jeff, hype man Jeff here in Keene Stadium. Our producer John wanted to hear about it. You were chosen to kind of be the pregame hype guy. Usually goes to a former player. What was it like out there hyping up the crowd? What was your mindset like? Were you nervous? All that stuff.
I was curious of why they chose me to do it, but I was honored. Jeremy Sharp, our sports information director, kind of media guy, he texted me earlier in the week because I let him know I was coming in town, and he gave me the list of guys that had done it earlier this season. It was Trey Boston, 7-year NFL guy, Jeff Saturday. Is he maybe a Pro Football Hall of Famer?
Yeah.
And then they go to me. So I'm just like, I don't know where I fit in that list, but I was honored to do it. I kind of got some inspiration from Pat McAfee. I love watching that guy. He always brings the juice.
You had a little wrestler vibe out there.
I'm glad you liked it.
Yeah.
But the funny thing about it was, so I guess, I hype up the crowd. I had a good time doing it. But the first possession of the game, Pitt goes down and scores. So I'm like, maybe it didn't work out. We ended up, pulling out.
And you get like the Tar heel chant going there. You had the hat on. You had the jacket on. The hair's coming back.
Yeah.
So I think people recognize you for the hat. I'm sure some younger fans are probably like, who's that?
For sure.
Okay. This is another question from John, our producer here in studio helping us out here. He wanted to know about the impact of the bulletin board material that a Pitt linebacker said about Drake May. I'm paraphrasing here. They said we're going to hit Drake hard, and if he doesn't get up, that's not our problem. So obviously kind of a threatening, foreboding, kind of we're going to get this guy down. After the game, I asked Coach Mac Brown, did the players know about that? He was like, the team was aware of those quotes. What does that do for a team? What motivation is that? Does that really make a difference? Do you see that kind of stuff? How can it galvanize a team heading to a game like that?
So I think Mac does a really good job of each week trying to find one little thing that goes on throughout the course of this, the week to give our team just a little bit of an edge. Whether that's a bulletin board material from a Pitt guy, whether that's a cancer awareness game, something like that, to give our guys just a little bit of extra motivation to play harder. Obviously I know they're motivated to try to win every game, and we have bigger goals on our hand than we're trying to win the ACC championship. We're trying to win every game we can. We're trying to win our bowl game, but just Mac does a good job of poking the bear a little bit and showing our guys what they're saying. I think it was more of a challenge for our offensive line. They've kind of been criticized over the past couple of years, but when an offensive line unit sees that being said throughout the week, especially talking about Drake and how they're going to hit him, I think they play with a little more chip on their shoulder because they know that they're responsible for keeping Drake upright.
Yeah, it's a great point. And while we're on the offensive line, I spoke to some sources this morning, and there's just been a general improvement on the offensive line, I think, across the board. I think having Corey Gaynor at center has really helped kind of anchor the middle of the line. Austin Richards, we're not talking about him enough. I think John mentioned him on the Beat podcast. He's had a great game, a great season. The fact that we don't talk about him kind of means he's doing well, right, with left tackle. Spencer Rowland, William Barnes, Ed Montilus. Overall, with the bringing on Jack Becknell, it seems like the O-line's a little bit better in run protection. In pass protection, improving in run blocking overall. Have you noticed a difference offensive line?
I just think we're more cohesive as a unit. We move together well. I think there's less blocking errors and IDing fronts from the defensive line. That's one way a defensive line can really confuse an offensive line. Stemming the front, playing different techniques, whether it's a three, a shade, 3 down versus 4 down, things of that nature. And I think our offensive line is just gelling together more. I think they're more veteran, obviously. You get Roland, he's a transfer, played a lot of football. Mm-hmm. Corey Gaynor started a bunch of games. Now Austin Richards is in his third year starting.
Yep.
All these guys are just more seasoned, more veteran. And obviously Big Nell has done a great job.
I think there's more to be desired in run blocking.
Yeah,
for sure. Yep. But pass blocking, which is an issue with Sam Howell. Sam Howell, did not have the best offensive line in terms of pass blocking. The source told me, he said, I wish that Sam Howell had this offensive line to throw behind.
And I think part of it is Drake and how he navigates so well in the pocket, and he's not afraid to check the ball down and throw it away. I think Sam was more of a gunslinger, would stay in the pocket longer, let our routes develop, and always thought that he could make the big throw. I think Drake is more, he's like Tom Brady in a way. He just makes the winning play. He makes the right play. He doesn't always take the 40-yard post. He'll throw the 2-yard check down and let one of our running backs make a guy miss and get 7.
Yeah, there's less of a deep passing game where you're waiting for that guy to get open deep. Drake will hit the guy across the middle. Maybe it helps he's a little bit taller, can kind of see those plays develop across the middle there. We've had a Tom Brady now reference for Drake May. I've heard a Justin Herbert reference. So
they're good company.
They're coming out there. All right, before we get out of here, we move to the whiteboard X and O section of this podcast, this show. A little bit about the depth. I think there's a little bit of a topic here. UNC loses Taylor, Evans, Nesbitt, Hood, and they got better. They pulled over in the second half. And Mac mentioned this, recruiting is starting to show a little bit. They didn't have much drop off. I don't know if you've noticed that at all, but just having the second player not be able to compete and play as well as the starters was huge in this game. Your thoughts on the talent and depth of this team maybe starting to show here after 8 games?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is in the D-line. We're playing a bunch of guys. Travis Shaw's getting snaps. We saw the week prior, or 2 weeks prior, when we were playing Miami, you get Keyshawn Silver in there for the first time, really, and he plays 9 or 10 plays. If you look at the stats, we got 10 guys on the D-line that are playing. Is that right?
Something like that.
10, 11?
Yeah, but Jacoby Cowan played 26 snaps. Cayman Rucker, Javari Ritzy. The names we talked about in preseason are finally showing it and playing. That means the staff is counting on them. I mean, we mentioned Don Chapman's playing more now. You have Will Hardy, Cavazos. So you're seeing a little more on defense. The staff is trusting a little bit more. That's what you expect kind of at this point of the season. All right, players of the game, offense.
So you could give it to Drake May every game.
Yeah.
You give it to Josh Downs 90% of the games, but I'm going to go Antoine Green for this one. His biggest game is in a Tar Heel, and in a game that is arguably one of the biggest we've had maybe since 2015. We're in the lead for the Coastal, and we control our own destiny, and it was a game where we had to have a big performance, and we needed someone to step up other than Drake and Josh, and Antoine was the guy. So I want to give him a bunch of credit. Proud of what he's overcome, and now he's turned himself into a damn good college football player. Yeah,
Sam Howell tweeted Antoine Green is an NFL wide receiver midway through the game. I think he makes Josh Downs better. I think when he came back from his injury, it kind of changed the offense, opened it up a little bit more. I'll give it to Drake May, 34 for 44, 388 yards, 5 touchdowns, big time throws, just balling out every game, the consistency, making plays, and just, his touchdown passes, some of them are unbelievable. Drake May. On defense, we already talked about them. Defense player of the game.
Cedric Gray.
Your guy.
I can't say enough good things about him. He was sideline to sideline. I think I saw on PFF, he graded as the highest guy, 90+ percentage. PFF, we can't always trust their judgment. They don't know the play calls and what exactly is going down, but, they have a good football awareness, and they do know what's going on. And Cedric Gray, once again, he, the big forced fumble, he had a TFL in the first half. He does a lot of things that go under the radar as well.
I want to mention Power Echols had was the third down stop, just stood up. Israel Admakande, that was huge too. Chris Collins played a lot, 49 snaps. It's good to mention him. I'll go Cayman Rucker, 36 snaps, forced fumble, big sack. That was a kind of a game-changing defensive possession there in the third quarter. He's always pressuring the quarterback. It seems like the UNC's main guy after Noah Taylor to pressure the quarterback. All right, before we get out of here, stay tuned. We're doing an X and O's whiteboard session with Jeff, as our subscribers on Inside Carolina have demanded. But first, UNC 7-1, 4-0 in the Coastal. Kind of got past this Miami, Duke, Pitt stretch that I thought was really important. Now they head up to Virginia, chance to go 8-1, 5-0 in the Coastal. Your thoughts, just looking at the season right now?
Yeah, I mean it's a success. We're in a great spot going forward too. I mean we've kind of figured out, our offense is going to carry us, but our defense is getting better. They really are. And if we can allow under 25 points a game and make some timely, big plays on defense, some turnovers, get the ball back to our offense, play complementary football, we could give Clemson a run for their money in the AC Championship.
So Virginia, then big one at Wake Forest.
Yep.
Wake Forest loses to Louisville pretty bad. I think it was 40-something to something. And then Georgia Tech, I was looking at John there for a number, but he uses his nose in his computer. Then Georgia Tech at home right before Thanksgiving. And then NC State on Black Friday, the day after Thanksgiving, without Devin Leary. State looked rough against Virginia Tech. They are anointing this MJ Morris guy, the true freshman. So 4 games left. 8-1. This team could easily win out in the regular season. I think Wake is going to be tough, especially coming off a Louisville loss. They'll be a little more motivated. But, book your tickets to Charlotte.
Book your tickets to Charlotte. I already booked my flight from Dallas to Charlotte, so I booked that 10 days ago. Yeah,
a lot of people were booking them before this game and after the Pitt win. People are booking hotel rooms, so pretty good chance UNC's playing the ACC championship game, likely against Clemson, and the chance for a great bowl situation for UNC as well. All right, calling the shots, Blue Shark Vodka. Appreciate your support. Stay tuned for an X and O's whiteboard session with Jeff. We appreciate you listening. UNC defeats Pitt 42-24. It's moved to 7-1. Next week is Virginia. Thanks for watching. All right, welcome back into Calling the Shots, presented by Blue Shark Vodka. Special segment here. We have Jeff Schoettmer breaking down some coverages, and we'll get into some offensive and some blocking schemes as well. Jeff, the floor is yours.
So we'll start with, we're going to diagnose Pitt's defense a little bit. And we talked about how they play a bunch of quarters coverage, and I'm going to give you a brief insight of, kind of how they play it. So we start with quarters, right? The cornerbacks are responsible for the 2 outside receivers. So this is just a standard 2x2 formation that UNC would show a lot in the game. The 2 safeties, so whether it's strong safety or free safety, they're responsible for the 2 inside receivers. So normally it's Josh Downs in the slot. And safeties are traditionally known as, better run defenders than they are cover guys. So essentially, if we were going to run a 4 vertical concept, meaning all 4 receivers on our offense run vertical routes. So outside receiver, say Antoine Green, he runs a vertical concept. Well, he's one-on-one with this cornerback. And the majority of the time, we'll take that all day Antoine mismatch over this cornerback. That means Josh Downs is in the slot. If he runs a vertical concept, this safety from 10 yards of depth has to cover Josh with all that space. And it's easier for a guy to cover Josh when he can get his hands on him and get physical with him, because Josh is so shifty. But with all this room to operate, that's why you saw Josh Downs so successful, because this safety has to cover him from so far away. So same thing on the other side. If he runs vertical, right, this safety has the other slot receiver, and then same thing with the cornerback. So that's just a simple, 4 vertical concept that we ran a decent amount in the game. That the corners, everyone's essentially in man coverage, because all the underneath defenders, the flat defenders, right? If we get a play fake from the quarterback, these underneath defenders, maybe it's the nickel, the Mike, and the Will, they have to have their vision in the box, because there's the chance that we hand the ball off. So these guys are all drawn to the run fake, and now we're essentially have 4 one-on-one matchups with their corners and their safeties.
So why would a defense run this? Like, what's the advantage of running quarters? Like, why do defenses like to do it?
Stop the run.
Because
Stop the run.
You have 7 players.
Because it's just a numbers game. So you have 4 D linemen. Right, we have 5 blockers right here, and they essentially have 7 guys that have their eyes in the run game. So it's just a numbers game. We have 5 blockers. They essentially have 7 guys. So we shouldn't. That's why we abandon the run a little bit, because they have so many guys with their eyes towards the run, and less for the pass.
So obviously, when those guys come up to stop the run, it allows Josh or a tight end to go across the middle. Is that kind of the advantage?
Yeah, and just I think obviously you're getting a one-on-one matchup outside. So that's why you saw Antoine Green have a big game, right? He was winning his one-on-one battle because the corner is essentially press man with no help, right? This safety has his attention on the slot, so this guy is one-on-one with no other help.
Yeah.
So that's kind of why you saw Antoine Green have a big game. And then quarters is really good to play if you have safeties that are good in pass coverage, right? Because it's really hard for them to be able to cover these slot receivers and these athletic tight ends with that much space. That makes sense?
Yeah, great. So quarters coverage, what Pitt ran against UNC on Saturday. This is Call the Shots, presented by Blue Shark Vodka. All right, now we're going to break down a couple of the defenses that UNC and defense coordinator Gene Chizik likes to use in Chapel Hill.
So this is a traditional 2x2 set with 11 personnel. 11 personnel meaning there's 1 tight end in the game and 1 running back with 3 receivers, and you see that a bunch from college football teams now. So what we do on defense is we match up skill for skill, right? The cornerbacks are always going to take the 2 outside receivers. Our nickel back, DeAndre Boykins, he's going to find the slot receiver. Cedric Gray is the will linebacker. He's going to find the tight end, and we're going to match up skill for skill with our remaining linebacker power going to be in the box, and then with a 2 high safety look. So similar to quarters, bracket coverage puts a lot of stress on our cornerbacks. Okay, so they kind of got to hold up because they really don't have help, because the safeties are responsible for bracketing or essentially doubling the inside receivers if they run vertical routes. So once again, we'll get a 4 vertical concept. So say this outside receiver runs vertical, right? This cornerback is essentially man-to-man with no help. If this slot receiver runs vertical, the nickel back is playing essentially outside leverage man.
Outside leverage
meaning he's shading his outside because he knows he's got the safety inside.
So we know he has help on the inside.
Correct. Yeah. So he's outside leverage man, and he knows this safety is going to help him on a vertical route. So we got 2 guys for 1 slot receiver. This cornerback is by himself. The Mike linebacker is responsible for the running back, and now Cedric Gray, it's a mirrored coverage on this side. He's outside leverage man on the tight end, and he knows he's got safety help over top. So, right, if the tight end runs vertical, Cedric Gray will be outside leverage man with, I should draw him more inside. So that route is a doubled. We have 2 guys on both inside routes, and now if this guy runs a vertical concept, the corner, so as you can see, the 2 cornerbacks, they're on an island. They're one-on-one, they have no help. And so the strength of our defense is in the middle because we essentially have double teams on both inside receivers. And it forces the quarterback to make the harder throw, which is the outside throw. So that's why you see sometimes our cornerbacks, they're in one-on-one. They have a very hard job in bracket coverage.
Yeah, I was going to say the benefit of that, so you have the kind of the routes that could go in the middle or the easier throws with your tight end, your slot, they have double on them.
So here's where bracket coverage is good in terms of, so say this slot receiver runs an underneath route. Right. Well, this nickel back has a man-to-man essentially, so he's going to run with him. So now that frees up this safety because he's not going to double a very shallow route because he can't get there from 10 to 12 yards of depth. So now this safety can turn his vision to the outside receiver. So say they run a concept where the slot goes under and this outside receiver runs like a deep in cut.
Yeah.
Well, now the cornerback has got outside leverage and now he can gain the help of this safety.
So the safeties have to make decisions.
The safeties have to make decisions. They're essentially going to double the first vertical route to their side. So it kind of helps if the slot eliminates himself because now the nickelback will take him by himself and it kind of frees up the safety.
I imagine this makes it light coverage for run support.
Yes, it's more of we play bracket for more of a pass stopping defense.
Yeah. All right, just football guy stuff here. Calling the shots with Jeff Schoettmer, brought to you by Blue Shark Vodka. All right, now we're going to break down some of UNC's popular blocking schemes they use in Phil Longo's offense. Jeff Schoettmer here, breaking it down.
So the 2 runs we run the most are inside zone and split zone, which are, I'll get to the nuts and bolts of these, and then gap scheme runs. So the first one we got is a true 11 personnel set with 1 tight end in the game and 3 receivers. This is a formation we'll see, 75% of the game. So the zone scheme, it's why it's called inside zone is because all the offensive linemen are blocking whoever's in their zone in their area, and they're all on tracks essentially. So this right tackle is responsible for the nearest defensive lineman in his zone. So essentially they're all going to have the same movement pattern, the same footwork. So say if we call zone to the right, these guys are all going to go block whoever's in their zone. Right, so we have 5 blockers for 6 guys in the box, and now this.
Would pause you there. So, would the left tackle block the nose guard?
He could step down to him, but then he would probably climb to the nearest linebacker.
Okay.
So, right, we got everyone covered up, and now the running back is just stepping, inside to take the handoff, and now he's kind of searching for a crease, searching for a hole. And why we haven't been as successful with this run is just because we haven't been able to create movement from our offensive line. I think they're better cover-up blockers, and they're more athletic than they are. We're going to knock you off the ball and create movement.
So the advantage of this, you have some big road grading guards that are just moving the offensive lineman and creating holes, and then the running back kind of picks a hole.
Correct.
That he has used his vision to find where the best crease is.
Correct. Yeah. So I think, if we have a great defensive line against us, and there's kind of stalemate in our offensive line, we're not creating space, we're not creating push, and that's why we're struggling with this run the majority of the time, and we're better with our gap scheme runs because I think we're more athletic when we pull and kind of let the running back find a hole and navigate through it.
Okay, zone scheme running. Now we're going to go into some gap scheme stuff. A little quick erase here. All right, Jeff's gonna draw out that as well. So 11 personnel again for UNC's offense.
So same formation, and so a gap scheme is why they call it that is because they're essentially creating another gap on the other side of the line, on the other side of the ball. So gap scheme could be it's when an offensive lineman pulls from his one side of the formation to the other side. So a traditional one we like to run is called counter, and we use counter with the tight end. So I'll draw a traditional 4 down front. And so this counter play is we have the guard pulling to the other side of the formation, and we have the tight end maybe taking a jab step to sell the defense like we're going one way, and now he's coming across to be another lead blocker. So why we're better at this is we got angles on all the blocks. So the center is going to back block here, this tackle is going to hinge and block him, and then we're getting a double team here to climb to the linebacker. So now this athletic guard that we have, he's pulling in space and going to block the defensive lineman, the defensive end, and now we have an athletic tight end who's going to cover up the next nearest defender, whether it's a nickel back, an outside linebacker, whatever it is. So now the running back's coming across the formation. He has more space to operate, and there's just our offensive linemen, our blockers are more athletic, so they're getting in the defensive way, and they're kind of covering them up instead of kind of moving them with brute force.
Yeah, so this would be Ed Montilus, left guard, pulling out here. This would be like a John Copenhaver, Kamari Morales, pulling out here. The running back, is he running off the shoulder of one person, making a decision here? What's going on?
So his target is usually the inside of the second puller, which is usually the tight end. Okay. So when he's pulling around, our target for this guy is really inside this guy's block. But obviously there's more space created because we have a double team here. If we get a double team and kind of push this guy out, then there's some space to hit it up inside. It just allows our running back to kind of feel the game more and just see where there's more space for him to operate.
Sometimes they cut back too, right?
Absolutely. If say we have a great back block and this guy kind of gets, we say, thrown out the club, like he gets knocked back, then this running back can kind of just pick, and he has more holes and more. If you have a running back with great vision, then this is a good run for him.
You get the whole defense moving this way and counter it that way. Yep. Does the center ever pull? Man,
he can.
See that, right?
Yeah.
The two pullers?
Two pullers. Counter.
Okay. All right, appreciate that. Jeff Schoettmer here, calling the shots, presented by Blue Shark Vodka with a little run game breakdown.